So the goal of this panel this afternoon is really to pull some of the concepts we talked about this morning. You'll notice that when we introduced the videos, we did that deliberately. We did that because there's lots of words, there's lots of literature. Everybody talks about long hallways and the impact that it has on patient care, and secondary alarms really become primary alarms because you can't hear what's going on in a room down that long hallway. We continue to hear that. So we wanted to make sure that we provided more than words, and the videos were to begin that dialogue. This afternoon, we're going to do some concept to reality. So we talk about road mapping. You know what? That's a big concept, y'all. How do you really road map? And how do you distill it down so that you can have a one-page view of what are you trying to do with this big, complex solution? So we're all going to provide our points of view on that road from concept to reality, and then we're going to encourage y'all to pick our brains, and we'd like to pick your brains as well. So we're going to start with Jill, talking about collaboration.
Okay, so there was some questions early on today about, how do you get everyone to the table? How do you get the right people to the table? How do you get them to participate? A lot of that's culture. I've been in the healthcare world as half of my profession, and the architecture world in the other half. And so if you don't have the right culture, it's a really much more of an uphill battle. Texas Children's has an incredibly ownership-driven culture. Sam's team, John's team, everyone really owns what they do here. So if my team, is going to go in and upset the apple cart, because that's what we do when we renovate, they want to be a part of it. They want to know what's going on. They get mad if we don't call them. So much of that is culture. I would say, however, that to have good outcomes of a project, of construction, of design, all the way down to the patient care provided, you've got to have that collaboration. I would say 10 years ago, when I first got here, that collaboration was here, but technology was not as integrated as it is today. Across the street in our older buildings, they're, in today's world, pretty simple buildings. The air conditioning runs by itself, the pumps run by themselves, the network runs by itself, the security system runs by itself, nurse call runs by itself. It's very what you might consider siloed. Buildings today are not that way. They're smart buildings, like you have a smartphone. So you've got to get everyone to the table to make sure you're doing the right decision. So how do you know who those right people are? Sometimes it's by default. I would say in my learning of the IS world, and you want to talk about learning each other's language, whew, that's fun. IS has three pretty distinct areas within it. So the network guys, the computer guys, the telephone guys. Now you have an electronic medical record. It's a whole nother guy. So you've got to get all those parties. You can't have, unfortunate to us, we can't have just one person at the table. We need them all at the table because they all integrate amongst each other, which integrates in the facility. That's just the solution team. Then you've got to have the problem team. You've got to have nursing at the table. You've got to have physicians at the table. You've got to have respiratory therapists at the table. You've got to know who you're solving the problem for. And you've got to know what that problem is. So if you think about the continuum of care and you think about the process of putting a facility together, you have to get all those people together. I would say the way to do it is put a very clear structure together. Who reports to who has decision authority, who doesn't have decision authority, who's consulting, who's informing, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't have that structure, you're going to have mayhem. Because If Sam says one thing, Melissa says another, who's the tiebreaker? So you've got to have that structure together. It takes a village. It absolutely does. To build this building, we had 27 user groups. Not one of them had less than 10 people on them. Each one of them had leadership. Each one of them had frontline leaders. And each one of them had physician representation. It takes a village. Took a bigger village to put it together. And the activation team to actually get this building up and running was over 100 people. So you've got to have that structure so you don't have just 100 crazy people running around. The biggest challenge that we face in my world is helping people think 5 years in advance. So I will use the Get Well Network. Sorry to pick on you. We knew we wanted to do some type of edutainment system in the organization, let alone the new buildings. What was it? What did it need? Because we needed the answer today. We needed to know what to put on drawings, what to build in the building. We didn't know. So you know what we did? We took a guess. It was a pretty good guess. I would guess a little differently today, but it was a pretty good guess. So we knew it was going to run on data. We knew it was going to run to a television. We knew we still had television. So we just brought a data port to the TV. Best guess we could do. Worked pretty well. But you can't get people to think 5 years down, like, would you have thought 6 years ago you would have this? You'd have, 400 apps on, nursing care, whatever. Would you have thought that 6 years ago? Probably not. So that is one of the biggest challenges, is to get people to think in the future, to push their envelope, and to make them make decisions that they're very uncomfortable with. But you've got to do it to keep up with it. One thing I failed to mention in my analysis of 2007 iPhone, 2007 starting this construction, 2007 we kicked off the electronic medical record too. I would not advise any owner to do that at the same time, but we did. So as John's team was off churning of all the different components of an electronic medical record, of scheduling and business processes and billing and clinical care and the clinical documentation and the chart, et cetera, and registration and la la la. John's team's trying to figure out what is that, what's right for Texas Children's. We're trying to build buildings, and we're trying to partner that. And man, we had a whole lot of people going, what are we doing? So would not recommend that, but we made it. We made it through. Did we make it perfectly? No. But we did the best we could. So the whole landscape of care with an electronic medical record is very, very different. And we had to have backup. We weren't really sure we were going to be able to go live day one when we opened the building. So we had to have what if we are still on paper charts? What if we aren't? So a lot of indecision that you've got to make decisions to make progress. So I mentioned structure. We have had for several years at Texas Children's a team of people that have kind of come along the way together in facility development. Like I said, it's really built on that internal ownership of those folks. And so we have been and formulated for many, many years, and we stick together arm in arm. So that structure helps a lot. And it's a pretty codified, formatted, official structure. I recommend that as part of a way to deliver a project integratively within the team. It also will drive best decisions and timely decisions, not in regards to time, but making the right decision at the right time together. Because if Sam's already made this decision and we're still back here, we're disconnected. So that is part of the structure. Decision making is part of the structure, But then how is it we even decide what we want to do? How do we address competing priorities? So we have a lot of, I often say, the best thing about Texas Children's is the creative thinking, and the worst thing about Texas Children's is our creative thinking. So we have put together a multidisciplinary group just to review and validate what is it we really want to do in the first place. So we have had, and we've done this by lessons learned, we have had people go off and go buy something. Didn't tell anyone. We now have a something on our loading dock. It can't plug into anything because no one told us it needed to plug into anything. So now we have a something on our loading dock that we have to pay a vendor for. Might be a really expensive something that's going to sit on the loading dock till we actually figure out what we need to do to use it. So those somethings are anywhere from a $7,000 lab freezer to hundreds of thousands of dollars of technology. So we've put together a process, a capital management process that is integrated, collaborative, and centralized. So we don't have things on the loading dock anymore. So that has been painful. We've gotten there. And what it has allowed us to do is have full transparency. I think Julie mentioned that she heard something in a meeting that we had Wednesday. She's like, oh, I got to go call Jennifer. That's what works to bring the collaboration together, to bring the right people to the table together and make the right decisions together.